Who's getting traded this year in the NBA? I've got the players that are most likely to be on the move. I'm Trevor Lane. This is the Basketball Bulletin. Hit that subscribe button. Want to get our subscribers up before the NBA season starts. All right, let's dive in. First and foremost, number one, DAngelo Russell. DAngelo Russell is a clear candidate to be traded by the Los Angeles Lakers. He picked up his player option this past summer, $18.7 million on the books this coming season. It's an expiring contract. Not a lot of teams need point guards right now. DAngelo Russell is a Laker, not because the Lakers haven't tried to trade him. They've tried, but they haven't found takers. But an $18.7 million expiring contract, if the Lakers are willing to take back some salaries, that will have some value out on the market. D'Lo, we know he can light it up. 18-6 last season on great percentages, but with the Lakers, is he the fit that they need? They already have Austin Reeves. You've got a little bit of skill set duplication in that backcourt. So DAngelo Russell remains a very likely trade candidate by the February 6th trade deadline. D'Lo will probably find himself in another jersey. Doesn't seem like the Lakers are committed to him long term. Seems like they're more in on Austin Reeves. So D'Lo probably finds himself as the guy on his way out of LA. From there, let's head down south to a former Laker. I'm talking about Pelicans wing Brandon Ingram. Now, we've talked a lot about BI already this summer. The Pelicans would certainly like to move on from Brandon Ingram if they could. And you look at his contractual situation, you'll see why. $36 million expiring contract. He's 27 years old. He's a talented player. He can give you 25-6 on any given night. But can Brandon Ingram be a guy that you can count on to be your team's second best player? I think most clubs say no. And if that's the case, especially when we look at the number of games he's played, he has missed a lot of games every single season. It's hard to pay him the kind of money he's going to want on his next deal. So that's the complicating factor here. Teams aren't trading for Brandon Ingram, not because he's not talented, not because he's not good, but he's not good enough to give a max contract to, and that's the type of money he's going to want on his next deal. So for a team to give up assets to the Pelicans, for them to trade Brandon Ingram, plus give him his next contract, well, they're not that interested in that. But nonetheless, the Pelicans, they have a massive hole at the center position. They have Daniel Tice, Yves Missi, who's a rookie, and that's it. They don't have a starting caliber center on this roster to the point where we're wondering if Zion Williamson is going to have to start at the 5. Meanwhile, they've got plenty of depth on the wing. They've got Herb Jones. They've got Trey Murphy III. These guys need minutes. They need opportunities. And so Brandon Ingram seems like a very obvious candidate to be traded, and specifically traded for a big. The Pelicans are one of a handful of teams that still need a center. I think they're going to eventually turn Brandon Ingram into a big, but they've not been able to do it so far. But I do expect Brandon Ingram to be on the move by the trade deadline this season. From there, speaking of bigs, let's go to a guy who may be a candidate to wind up on the New Orleans Pelicans. There's already been rumors that the Pelicans have tried to do something around this. The Atlanta Hawks, you go look at Clint Capella, an interesting candidate to get moved. 30 years old. Honestly, I think he took a little bit of a step back last season. He is the prototypical screen, roll hard to the rim type of big. He's not going to step out and stretch to the three-point line, but he can rebound the hell out of the ball. He can block shots. $22.3 million expiring contract this season. And you've got the successor already waiting. He's on the roster, Onyeka Okongwu. The Hawks would like to give him more opportunities. Now, the Hawks ultimately didn't want to give up Clint Capella in a deal for Brandon Ingram. Again, people don't want to be the club to pay Brandon Ingram on his next contract, but a guy like Capella could very well find himself on the move, particularly if Atlanta is not clicking on all cylinders to start the season. Remember, they just traded away, ironically, to the New Orleans Pelicans, guard DeJounte Murray. So now the ball will be back permanently, full-time in the hands of Trae Young. It will be a heliocentric offense around him. They've got some interesting pieces there. You've got Bogdan Bogdanovic, who's one of my favorite players to watch. DeAndre Hunter can do some things on the wing. Jalen Johnson is such an exciting young player to keep an eye on. They've got some interesting pieces. The number 1 overall pick, Zach Reese-O'Shea. They've got guys on this squad, but a bit of rebalancing may be needed, and there's enough teams out there looking for a center right now that I think Clint Capella will be on the move by the time the dust settles at the trade deadline. From there, let's head out west to the Portland Trailblazers. Now, there's a bunch of guys from the Blazers that could and really should be on the move. All of these guys that are a little bit older, these are all players who the Blazers should seriously consider moving on from. Jeremy Grant is the main guy we focus on. 30 years old, kind of a long-term contract, right? 4 years on the books, including this season, and a player option. Ouch, that hurts. A player option on the final year of his deal. You've also got Robert Williams, who's dealt with a bunch of injury issues over the years, 27 years old. Again, a lot of teams out there looking for a big $12.4 million on the books here for him, $13.2 million the next season. He's a guy who could be on the move as well. Even Anthony Simons, does he really fit in the backcourt when you're going to build around Shaedon Sharpe and Scoot Henderson? Is he a guy that could go as well? So you've got a number of Blazers who could be on the market. The main focal point, though, it's Jeremy Grant. There's a lot of teams looking for wing help. And he's already been in discussions with the Lakers on a potential deal. They weren't able to come to a conclusion there. A lot of it being that the Blazers will tell you, oh, no. He's not a bad contract. Yeah, he is, Portland. Everybody knows Jeremy Grant's a bad contract. It was a bad contract the second that deal was signed. But nonetheless, Jeremy Grant's still a talented player. And somebody would not shock me at all if he was on the move. I think the Portland Trail Blazers, look, I don't think his value is going to go up as he gets older and older. The time to strike is now. It's this season. Move them, get what you can, continue to build around the young players. All right, let's jump over to the Brooklyn Nets, racking up those frequent flyer miles going all the way from Portland to Brooklyn. They also, in a similar situation to the Blazers, they've got some veteran players that would make a lot of sense for them to move on from. Cam Johnson is mainly the guy I want to focus on here. $23.6 million this season. He's a wing, 28 years old, came into the NBA as an older rookie, but can shoot the hell out of the ball, gives you some versatility on the wing. A lot of teams should be interested in him. And at 28, he's probably just old enough to where when the Nets are good enough to really start contending, when they're ready to start making that push, he's going to be more on the downswing of his career. So Cam Johnson would make a lot of sense for the Nets to move on from him. Bojan Bogdanovic, my goodness, trade him as quickly as you can. Brooklyn, 35 years old. Can you get anything for him? $19 million expiring contract. If you can, do it, even if it means you have to take on some bad salary. Maybe you can get a draft asset or something like that in exchange for Bojan Bogdanovic, his expiring deal going out for a player who's not wanted on another team with a longer-term deal. Dennis Schroeder, 31 years old. He should certainly be moved by the trade deadline as well. Let's see what happens. Are there teams that suffer some injuries at the guard position? If there are, they're probably going to be calling Brooklyn right away, trying to get Dennis Schroeder. Can give you some consistency at the point guard position. So he's another one that should definitely be on the way out for the Nets. Of course, let's not forget the guy that's been in so many trade rumors. We've been talking about him all summer, Zach LaVine. It is maybe the worst kept secret in the NBA that the Bulls, they want to move on from Zach LaVine. Zach LaVine, he wants to move on from the Bulls. The problem, it's that contract. Remember we talked about it with Brandon Ingram. You can't be getting near max money or max money and be like the third best player on a championship team. Under the new CBA, that's a no-no. Your max level guys have to be your top guy or your second best guy. Zach LaVine probably projects, just like Brandon Ingram, to be the third best guy on a championship team. So that's salary. 3 years on the books, that last year being a player option, kind of like Jeremy Grant, that hurts. That's a tough salary to move. But if the Bulls can find the right trade partner, if they can get Zach LaVine back on the floor, remember, he missed a good chunk of last season due to injury. If he can get back out on the floor and prove that he's healthy, 29 years old, he's a high fly act, but this guy can fill it up. And it wouldn't shock me if he looks good for the Bulls in the beginning part of the season, if some contenders start to call those teams that are maybe in the West where the race is so tight, a team could look to Zach LaVine to be that boost to really put them over the hump. So it wouldn't shock me if a team makes a call on Zach LaVine, but he is certainly a name to watch on the trade market because there's motivation there for both parties. Zach LaVine knows, the Bulls know, it's time to move on. You can add Nikola Vucevic into that mix too. I'm worried about the age cliff for him. Has it already hit him? If so, may be difficult for the Bulls to move on from him, but $20 million this season, $21.5 million next season, another player that very well could be on the trade market for the Bulls, who appear to have finally picked a direction. They're going to rebuild around young talent. I don't like the Alex Caruso trade that they made, but still, at least the Bulls, kind of like the Nets, it appears that they're finally picking a direction for this team. Now, let's jump over to Washington. Speaking of poorly kept secrets, the Wizards, it was weird that they signed Jonas Valanciunas. Why do they need? They just drafted Alex Sarr. They're a young team. They're trying to rebuild around young players. They're probably going to wind up trading Kyle Kuzma, who's 29 years old and is probably a little bit too old for when this Wizards team is eventually good. Malcolm Brogdon at 32. They need to move on from him too. But Jonas Valanciunas, this deal, look, you look at the structure of this contract. This deal was signed to be traded. It's very clear. Jonas Valanciunas is there to be the training wheels for Alex Sarr for however long he needs them, and then they're going to move on from him. They're going to flip him in a trade and try to get assets back for him. You look at this deal, 9.9 million, 10.4 million. Super easy for just about any team out there to trade for that number. Stacking up salaries to get to that, simple. And then look at this, beautiful. Forget a player option in the final year, $10 million in the final year of the deal, fully non-guaranteed. How's that for flexibility? Only 2 years guaranteed, non-guaranteed third year. Teams love seeing that kind of stuff. The Washington Wizards, they are going to flip Jonas Valanciunas. Just the question is, when? Are they going to do it early on in the season at the trade deadline? Maybe wait until next summer, but there's no question Jonas Valanciunas is not going to finish out this contract with the Washington Wizards. He will be moved on to another team by then. Let's wrap things up with a guy that I think has kind of gotten forgotten about on the trade market. Let's head up north to the Toronto Raptors. $23 million on the books for Bruce Brown Jr. This was a team option, and the Raptors specifically picked up this deal to trade him. They could have declined his option and he would have hit free agency. $23 million is a lot for Bruce Brown, but it's an expiring contract, and the Raptors are determined to not let him just walk away into free agency for nothing. Instead, they want to use this expiring contract in a trade to get back some assets. Pretty clear, Toronto, he's not in their long-term plans. Bruce Brown Jr., he's not going to stick long-term, but they are going to move him whenever they find a deal to their liking. That's specifically why they picked up this team option, not to use him as a player on the floor, but instead to use him as a trade chip. So it's a good bet that when the trade deadline hits, Bruce Brown will no longer be a Toronto Raptor. All right, everybody, let me know your thoughts. Did I miss anybody? Were there any other players that you guys think are going to get traded over the course of this NBA season? Let me know in the comment section. And don't forget, subscribe right here to the Basketball Bulletin. We're going to keep you up to date on all the latest NBA news, rumors, trade talks, all of that as we get closer and closer to the start of the season. So hit that subscribe button and don't forget to turn on notifications as well. And if you wouldn't mind, do me a favor, like this video too. Till next time, everybody, see ya and stay safe.